The small shuttle hummed as it drifted through the asteroid field surrounding Aurelia 9. Captain Rylan Voss adjusted the controls, his eyes scanning the display for unusual energy signatures. The field was vast, a chaotic sea of rock tumbling through space, each asteroid unique in shape and size. Rylan had seen countless fields like this, but the sensor readings flickered in a way that made his instincts tense. Something was different, something alive, or at least something unnatural. Rylan leaned back in his seat, his gloved hands steady on the controls. He was a man used to danger, trained to face it with calm and precision, yet even he felt a twinge of caution as the readings spiked again. They were irregular, like bursts of energy from a small source, hidden between the larger asteroids. Curiosity pulled him forward, stronger than fear, as it always did. He adjusted the shuttle's course, threading it carefully through jagged rocks, each one illuminated by the faint light of Aurelia 9's twin suns. He could feel the hum of the ship vibrating beneath him, a constant reminder of the isolation of space. His eyes flicked to the scanner. The readings led to a small cavern at the edge of a massive asteroid. Its entrance was narrow, almost hidden from casual observation, but the sensor clearly indicated something moving inside. Rylan's heart beat in rhythm with the shuttle's steady hum. He had faced hostile worlds, alien beasts, and treacherous terrain before, but there was something almost fragile in the readings this time. Hesitation lingered in his mind, fleeting yet persistent. The signal was small, delicate, yet insistent, and it stirred a protective instinct he hadn't felt in years. He docked the shuttle with practiced ease at a flat outcropping near the cave's entrance. The surface was uneven, and the asteroid shifted slightly under his weight as he stepped out. The cold of space was nothing new to him, but the stillness was strange, almost eerie. He drew his utility blade, a simple tool more than a weapon, and advanced cautiously. The cave was dark, shadows stretching like fingers from the walls. Inside, he noticed a figure. She was small, hunched against the far wall, trembling. At first, he thought she was injured, but as he stepped closer, he realized she was very much alive, watching him with wide, unblinking eyes. Her skin glimmered faintly, almost translucent, catching the dim light of his flashlight in subtle colors. It was like staring at a living jewel, delicate and fragile. The girl's eyes were enormous, reflective, and filled with something that froze him in place for a moment. Fear, yes, but also intelligence, curiosity, and something deeper he could not name. She trembled more as he approached, retreating slightly into the shadows of the cave. He stopped, raising his hands slightly, a universal gesture of peace. "Hey," he said softly, his voice echoing slightly off the stone walls. "I'm not here to hurt you. My name's Rylan. Can you understand me?" She didn't speak. Her lips moved faintly, like she was forming sounds he could not hear. Her hands trembled in front of her chest, almost protective, and her body shivered with a mixture of cold and fear. He noted the faint energy aura around her, the same irregular pulses that had drawn him here. They were small, delicate, yet potent in a way he had never seen. He took a cautious step forward, his boots crunching against the rough stone floor. "I don't want to hurt you," he repeated. "I just want to help." The trembling intensified. He stopped again, not wanting to force her. Something about the way she moved, the way she watched him, told him that she had been through more than most beings ever could. She was alone, far from home, and clearly hiding from someone or something. He could sense it. Her fear was not random. It was survival instinct honed by experiences he couldn't yet imagine. Rylan knelt slightly to appear less threatening. "It's okay," he said, trying to convey calm with his voice and posture. "You don't have to be afraid of me." The girl's eyes darted toward a narrow tunnel on the side of the cave. His gaze followed hers, and he noticed faint scratches on the rocks, signs of hurried movement, as if someone, or something, had passed through recently. The hairs on the back of his neck rose. "Someone's been here," he murmured. "Are they after you?" She flinched, but did not answer. Instead, she slowly extended a small, delicate hand toward him. It was a gesture of trust, tentative yet brave. He regarded her carefully, then reached out to gently take her hand. It was cold, almost icy, but not lifeless. She shivered violently at the contact, but did not pull away. "Good," Rylan said softly. "We'll figure this out. Together." The cave trembled suddenly, a minor quake that rattled loose stones around their feet. He looked up instinctively, scanning the shadows. The energy readings spiked violently, almost like a heartbeat, echoing in his mind. He realized that the source of the signal, the girl, was reacting to something beyond the physical, something that made her fear so acute. "What's wrong?" he asked quietly, more to himself than to her. He noticed that her markings, glimmering patterns along her arms and neck, shifted violently with her fear. They pulsed with light and color, flickering like a living neon map of her emotions. She whimpered softly, crouching closer to the wall. Rylan crouched beside her, careful to keep his movements slow. "It's okay. I'm here," he said, though he did not fully understand what she was hiding from. His gut told him it was more dangerous than he could see. He reached into his pack and pulled out a small portable scanner. "Let me try something," he said. The device hummed and beeped as he activated it, scanning the cave and the energy readings around her. The readings spiked wildly, and the girl gasped, almost in surprise. He noticed a series of faint trails leading out of the cave, like invisible fingers stretching into the darkness of space, marking a path of pursuit. "They're close," he murmured. "Someone is coming for you, but we won't let them find you first." Her eyes widened, and she pressed herself closer to him. He felt the pulse of her fear through the air around them, almost as if it were tangible. Her trembling was no longer just from the cold or fatigue. It was a warning, a signal that danger was near. Rylan stood slowly, scanning the entrance of the cave. The asteroid field outside shimmered under the light of Aurelia 9, and he could see faint distortions in the air, as though the atmosphere itself were reacting to something approaching. He realized that whoever or whatever had been chasing her was capable of advanced technology, perhaps even manipulating space around them. "Stay behind me," he said, his voice firm but calm. "I'll protect you." She nodded slightly, her large eyes trusting him for the first time. The trembling continued, but it was tempered with determination. She pressed herself against the wall as he advanced toward the cave entrance, his blade in hand, scanning for any threat. Outside, the asteroid field seemed quiet, almost unnaturally still. Rylan's eyes narrowed. His instincts told him this calm was the precursor to danger. He took a deep breath, calculating their chances. The shuttle was nearby, fast, maneuverable, but it would take them seconds to reach safety. Seconds they might not have. Suddenly, a shadow flickered across the rocks. Something moved with unnatural speed, too fast for the eye to follow. Rylan spun toward it, raising his blade, but it vanished before he could see clearly. The girl gasped and pressed herself against him, her hands clutching at his arm. "It's okay," he whispered. "We'll get through this." Her markings flared brightly, pulsating with energy. Rylan realized that the girl's fear was connected to the energy readings. She was somehow aware of the approaching danger before it was even visible. This realization sent a chill through him. If her senses were this advanced, their pursuers would be just as relentless, perhaps even more. He grabbed her hand, guiding her toward the shuttle. She followed, trembling but obedient. They moved through the rocky terrain carefully. Rylan keeping a sharp eye on every shadow, every flicker of light. His mind raced with strategies, escape routes, contingencies. He had faced danger before, but nothing quite like this. Protecting a being whose very presence might be the key to something much larger than himself. Finally, they reached the shuttle. Rylan opened the hatch, helping her inside first. She moved quickly now, almost instinctively, as if she had been trained for moments like this. He followed, sealing the hatch behind them and activating the engines. The shuttle's thrusters hummed to life, lifting them off the asteroid's surface. As they ascended, Rylan looked back. The cave and the asteroid field stretched beneath them, quiet once again, but he knew the calm was temporary. Whatever had been after her would not give up easily. He glanced at the girl, who now sat quietly in the shuttle, her trembling slowly subsiding. Her eyes met his, and he nodded reassuringly. "We're safe for now," he said softly, "but only for now." She didn't speak, but her eyes told him she understood. And as the shuttle cut through the asteroid field, weaving toward the distant lights of Aurelia 9, Rylan realized one thing with clarity. This encounter was only the beginning. The girl, small and fragile though she appeared, held secrets and powers that could change everything he knew about the universe. And he would protect her, no matter what. The stars stretched endlessly before them, glittering like distant fires. Somewhere out there, danger was moving, relentless and unseen. But in the shuttle, a fragile bond had formed between human and alien, fear and trust intertwined. And as the shuttle disappeared into the void, Rylan vowed silently that he would not fail. Not her, not this mission. The trembling of the alien girl, once a sign of fear, now became a symbol of hope. Hope that they could survive. Hope that together they could face whatever the galaxy had in store. And for the first time in a long while, Rylan allowed himself a flicker of optimism. The shuttle moved silently through the black expanse of space, Aurelia 9 shrinking behind them. Captain Rylan Voss kept his hand steady on the controls, though his mind raced with questions. The alien girl, Lyra, sat quietly in the co-pilot's seat, her hands folded in her lap. Her luminescent markings pulsed faintly, reflecting the rhythm of her cautious breathing. She was calmer now, yet the occasional shiver betrayed a fear he could not entirely soothe. Rylan stole a glance at her. Her large eyes followed his every movement, scanning the instruments and displays with curiosity and intelligence. She did not speak, but he sensed she understood far more than she let on. The shuttle's sensors had not detected anyone pursuing them yet, but he knew from experience that peace in the vastness of space was often temporary. Danger had a way of appearing when one least expected it. "Lyra," he said softly, trying to find the simplest way to communicate with her. "We are safe for now. I want to know about you. Where are you from?" She looked at him, tilting her head slightly. Her eyes held a mixture of curiosity and caution. Then, slowly, she raised a small hand and traced a line through the air. The gesture was deliberate, almost like drawing a path. Rylan followed the movement with his eyes. It seemed she was trying to communicate through symbols rather than words. He nodded. "A path? You traveled? You came from far?" Lyra's markings pulsed brighter at his attempt to understand, and she made a soft, melodic sound, almost like a sigh. Rylan interpreted it as a confirmation. She had traveled a great distance, alone. The thought tightened his chest. Any being forced to flee through the galaxy on their own carried a story of loss, fear, and survival. "I can help," he said gently. "I am here to help you. You are not alone anymore." Lyra's eyes softened slightly, the first sign of trust since he had found her in the cave. She moved closer to him, her small hand brushing against his arm for a moment. He felt the coldness of her skin and understood the trembling he had seen earlier was not just fear. It was exhaustion, stress, and the weight of being hunted. Ryland's thoughts returned to the cave, to the energy readings, and the invisible traces of pursuit. Whoever or whatever had chased her was not just persistent, it was precise and intelligent. The signs of their trail were subtle, almost imperceptible to ordinary sensors, but Lyra's own senses had detected it. That made the threat dangerous in ways he could not yet measure. He adjusted the shuttle's course toward a nearby asteroid belt, hoping to use its dense terrain as cover. "We need a safe place to stop," he said. "Somewhere you can rest, and I can try to understand more about you." Lyra's head tilted again, her eyes scanning the instruments. Then, in a series of delicate gestures, she pointed to a cluster of asteroids on the scanner. Her markings pulsed rhythmically, and Ryland realized she was directing him. Trust, fragile yet growing, was forming between them. He nodded silently and adjusted the shuttle's trajectory. The asteroid belt loomed ahead, a chaotic array of jagged rocks spinning slowly in the void. Ryland navigated carefully, weaving through the floating stones with practiced skill. The shuttle's engines hummed steadily, and the dim light of distant stars reflected off the hull. Lyra's eyes followed every movement, absorbing the scene with quiet wonder, as if seeing space for the first time in such detail. After several tense minutes, they reached a relatively stable asteroid, one with a natural cave formation similar to the one where Ryland had first found her. He carefully landed the shuttle inside, the engines echoing off the rocky walls before shutting down. The silence that followed was almost deafening. Lyra stepped out first, her small frame moving lightly across the uneven ground. She paused to touch the rocks, her fingers tracing the rough surfaces with curiosity and recognition. Ryland watched, noticing for the first time that her luminescent markings seemed to respond to her environment. They glowed brighter when she touched the stones and dimmed when she pulled away. It was as if the very energy of the asteroid resonated with her presence. "Rest here," he said softly. "You can take your time. No one can find us here easily." Lyra sank to the ground, her trembling reduced to occasional shivers. She leaned against the wall of the cave, closing her eyes briefly as if trying to regain some strength. Ryland watched her, his thoughts heavy with questions. Who had attacked her home? Why was she alone? And what made her special enough to be hunted across the stars? Ryland decided to explore the asteroid, scanning for resources. He found small deposits of minerals and pockets of water trapped in ice. While the supplies were modest, they would be enough for a short stay. As he worked, he noticed Lyra watching him, her eyes bright with curiosity. She seemed fascinated by his tools, the shuttle, and the simple routines of survival. He knelt beside her, holding out a small water container. She took it hesitantly, her glowing fingers brushing his hand again. Ryland smiled. "You don't have to be afraid," he said. "We are safe here, at least for a while." The melodic sound she made in response was soft, almost like a hum. It was the closest thing to a word she had uttered. He interpreted it as trust, fragile and delicate, but trust nonetheless. As evening fell in Aurelia 9's orbit, the asteroid cave glowed with the dim reflection of distant suns. Shadows stretched along the rocky walls, and Ryland sat near Lyra, keeping watch. He didn't know when the danger might return, but he refused to let fear control them. She had survived this long, and he intended to help her continue. Hours passed, and Ryland noticed subtle changes in Lyra. Her luminescent markings pulsed more evenly, and she moved with a cautious but deliberate grace. He realized that she had been in hiding for so long that any small moment of safety felt extraordinary. Her trembling had lessened, replaced by alert awareness. "Lyra," he said gently, "I want to understand you. If you can, show me where you come from. Tell me about your home." She looked at him, large eyes wide, then drew a shape in the air with her finger. It was complex, almost like a map of interconnected lines and symbols. Rylan traced the pattern with his eyes, recognizing constellations and planetary systems unfamiliar to human charts. She was showing him the path she had traveled, the journey that had brought her to him. He nodded slowly, understanding the enormity of it. She had traveled across countless light years, evading forces that had already destroyed her world. She was small and fragile, yet possessed a strength born of necessity and survival. Rylan felt a deep respect for her resilience. "You've been through so much," he said quietly. "I don't know everything, but I promise I won't let them hurt you. You won't be alone anymore." Lyra's markings glowed softly, brighter than before. She leaned slightly against him, a silent acknowledgement of his promise. For a moment the cave was quiet, save for the faint hum of the shuttle's backup systems and the distant pulse of energy radiating from her. Rylan knew their reprieve would not last. He had scanned the asteroid belt repeatedly, and though the immediate vicinity was clear, he could sense the subtle traces of their pursuers. Whoever had destroyed her home and sent her fleeing was capable, patient, and relentless. He had to act before they closed the distance. He checked the shuttle's systems, calculating escape routes, fuel reserves, and possible hiding spots among nearby asteroids. Lyra watched him, following his every move with fascination and perhaps understanding beyond human capability. Her trembling had nearly stopped, replaced by a focused intensity. She seemed to sense the danger, even if she did not yet understand the full scope of it. Suddenly, a low hum resonated through the asteroid, vibrating through the rocks beneath their feet. Lyra stiffened, her markings pulsing violently. Rylan froze, listening carefully. It was faint, almost imperceptible, yet unmistakable, a sign that something large was moving through space, approaching them. "They are close," he murmured. "Stay behind me." Lyra moved instinctively, stepping behind him and pressing close. Her trust was complete now, though her fear remained. Rylan adjusted his grip on his utility blade, scanning the shadows for any movement. The asteroid's natural formations could hide even the largest threats, and he had to be ready for anything. Minutes passed, tension thick in the cave. Then a flicker of light outside the entrance caught his eye. Shadows shifted unnaturally across the rocks. His heart beat faster. Whoever they were, they had found the energy traces that led to Lyra. Rylan knew there was no time for hesitation. He would have to move quickly, using both the shuttle and the asteroid's natural terrain to stay ahead. Lyra's abilities, whatever they were, would be crucial. He could feel the faint energy pulses she emitted, sensing danger before it arrived. Together, they might stand a chance. "Lyra," he said softly, "we need to go. Now." Her markings flared brightly and she nodded. She followed him to the shuttle, moving swiftly, her trembling replaced by determination. As they lifted off, Rylan glanced back at the cave, the first home she had found in this part of space. He didn't know if they would return, but he knew they had to survive this. The stars stretched endlessly before them, glittering like distant fires. Somewhere out there, danger was relentless, but within the shuttle, a fragile bond had grown stronger. Human and alien, fear and trust intertwined, ready to face whatever the galaxy had in store next. Rylan Voss's jaw set with determination. They had survived the first trial together, but he knew the chase had only begun. Lyra's trembling was no longer a sign of weakness. It was a warning, a signal, and a promise that she would grow stronger alongside him. And he would not let her face the galaxy alone. The shuttle wove carefully through the asteroid belt, Ryland's hands steady on the controls, though every instinct in his body screamed alert. Lyra sat beside him, her small frame tense, but her eyes wide and observant. Her luminescent markings pulsed with every sudden movement of the shuttle, reflecting the growing intensity of the chase. She no longer trembled as she had before. Now, her fear had turned into a sharp focus, as if every sense in her body were aware of the dangers surrounding them. Ryland glanced at the scanner. The readings were faint, but unmistakable. Something large and fast was closing the distance behind them. Whoever had destroyed Lyra's home and driven her across the galaxy was relentless. He had to rely on his knowledge of asteroid navigation and Lyra's unique abilities to stay ahead. "Hold tight," he said quietly. "We'll use the asteroids for cover. You'll need to trust me." Lyra's large eyes met his, and she gave a small nod. Her markings flickered with determination, a rhythm that seemed almost like a heartbeat syncing with Ryland's own. Together, they were a single unit, human instinct and alien senses blending in a delicate balance of trust and survival. Ryland angled the shuttle sharply, weaving between two massive asteroids that rotated slowly in the void. Debris scraped the hull, sending sparks along the surface, but he kept the shuttle steady. Lyra instinctively reached out, her fingers brushing the control panel. A pulse of her energy resonated through the ship, subtle yet powerful, and the shuttle responded slightly, as if influenced by her presence. Ryland realized that her abilities extended even into the machinery of the shuttle. "Impressive," he muttered. "You're stronger than you look." She made a soft melodic sound in response, her gaze fixed on the path ahead. The silence between them was not empty. It was filled with focus, anticipation, and the unspoken understanding that failure was not an option. Suddenly, a shadow flickered across the scanners. Ryland's heart tightened. It was their pursuers, moving with frightening precision. These were not ordinary hunters. They were experienced, heavily armed, and technologically advanced. He adjusted the shuttle's speed, using the asteroid formations to hide their energy signature. The rocks shifted, creating natural cover, but only for moments. Every second counted. Lyra's markings glowed brightly as she extended her hands. A subtle wave of energy pulsed outward, shimmering through the cabin. Ryland realized she was using her abilities to shield the shuttle, bending light and energy just enough to obscure them from the scanners. It was delicate work, and he kept the shuttle steady, giving her focus and space to maintain the effect. The pursuers detected the anomaly immediately. A fleet of small, agile craft burst from behind an asteroid, their lights cutting sharply through the darkness. Ryland twisted the controls, dodging laser blasts that streaked past them like fiery serpents. The shuttle's hull rattled with each near miss, and he gritted his teeth. "We're not going down," he muttered. "Not today." Lyra's energy flared again, brighter and stronger. The lights on her skin danced in complex patterns, creating illusions that distorted the shuttle's actual location. The pursuing ships fired blindly, their sensors fooled by the shifting energy and false images. Ryland maneuvered aggressively, weaving in and out of the asteroid belt with precision, while Lyra's powers created layers of confusion for their attackers. Despite the danger, Ryland noticed something remarkable. Lyra's confidence had grown. She no longer trembled. Her fear had transformed into purpose, and she seemed to enjoy the challenge of using her abilities in real time. Her trust in him and the shared effort of survival created a bond stronger than words could express. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours as they dodged and countered every attack. The asteroid belt became a chaotic dance of shadows and light, with Ryland and Lyra moving as if in perfect harmony. Yet he knew this could not last forever. Their pursuers were patient, clever, and relentless. They needed a place to rest and plan their next move, somewhere the fleet could not follow immediately. Rylan spotted an abandoned space station tucked in a small, stable orbit around a gas giant. Its metal surface was dull and worn, evidence of years of neglect, but it had power and shelter. He steered the shuttle toward the station, dodging one last wave of attackers before they reached the docking bay. Lyra extended her energy outward, creating a shimmering shield that absorbed the worst of the last blast. Sparks danced across the shuttle's surface, but the hull held. They docked, and the silence of the station enveloped them. The hum of its systems was comforting after the chaos outside. Lyra stepped out first, moving cautiously across the metal floor. Rylan followed, scanning for hidden traps or dangers. The station was empty, but the air carried a faint charge, as if it had been dormant for years, waiting for someone to bring it back to life. Lyra's eyes lit up as she explored. She ran her fingers along control panels, consoles, and walls. Her markings glowed in response to the station's latent energy, pulsing with recognition and subtle joy. She seemed to know instinctively how to interact with the systems, and Rylan realized that her connection to technology was not just instinct. It was natural, like a language she had learned long before he had. "This place will do for now," Rylan said. "We can rest, repair the shuttle, and plan our next move, but we can't stay too long." Lyra nodded, her eyes reflecting the dim lights of the station. She moved to a small corner, sitting down with her knees drawn up. Her energy pulses slowed, and the calm in her posture showed a rare moment of peace. Rylan watched her for a while before starting repairs on the shuttle. As he worked, he noticed Lyra occasionally touching parts of the station, her energy flaring in subtle bursts that seemed to awaken dormant systems. Lights flickered on where she passed, screens activated, and the station hummed quietly, almost as if recognizing her presence. Rylan marveled at her abilities, understanding that she was more than just a survivor. She was powerful, capable, and uniquely in tune with both energy and technology. Night fell in the orbit of the gas giant, though in space, night was just a shift in light. The station's interior glowed softly, and Rylan finally took a moment to sit beside Lyra. "I need to know more about your home," he said. "What happened to your planet? Why are they after you?" Lyra looked at him, hesitation flickering across her features. Then, slowly, she traced a complex shape in the air. It was a map of her home system, her planet, and the surrounding worlds. The markings pulsed as she outlined a series of connected lines representing the journey she had made, the path she had taken to survive. Rylan followed her gestures carefully. He recognized some celestial patterns, though most were entirely alien. "You escaped," he said quietly. "You survived alone. That is remarkable." Lyra made a soft sound, almost like a sigh, then drew a symbol he didn't understand. It pulsed brightly. Rylan realized it was a warning, a symbol of danger. Whoever had chased her had likely followed her path across space, relentless and calculating. He placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "We'll face them together," he said firmly. "You are not alone anymore. I will not let them take you." Her markings pulsed softly in response, slower and steadier now, like a heartbeat settling after a storm. She leaned slightly against him, her trust complete. But the quiet was temporary. A faint vibration ran through the station, almost imperceptible. Rylan stiffened, scanning the sensors. The fleet had tracked them, adjusting their course to intercept. They would not give up. "We have company," he said softly. "They found us." Lyra rose, her small frame tense but ready. Her markings glowed brighter, a steady rhythm of energy that seemed to expand outward. Rylan realized she was preparing, not just for defense, but for offense if necessary. The tremble that had once signaled fear was gone. Now it was a signal of readiness, a demonstration of her growing confidence and power. The first attackers appeared on the station's external sensors, sleek, fast craft, maneuvering into position. Rylan activated the station's defense systems while guiding Lyra to a central console. Together, they formed a plan. Lyra's abilities could create illusions and energy barriers, while Rylan used his tactical knowledge to trap and mislead the attackers. The battle began. Energy pulsed through the station as Lyra extended her powers, bending light and sound to confuse their pursuers. The attackers fired blindly, their sensors fooled by the illusions. Rylan manipulated the station's automated systems, sealing doors, activating traps, and creating pathways to channel the attackers into narrow corridors. Despite the chaos, Lyra moved with purpose, her confidence shining. She extended her hands, and the station's corridors shimmered with energy that disoriented the intruders. Rylan admired her focus, realizing she had transformed from a frightened, trembling girl into a skilled and powerful ally. The attackers pressed on, relentless, but Rylan and Lyra's combined efforts held them at bay. The station became a maze of light and shadow, each step calculated, each move strategic. Every pulse of Lyra's energy strengthened their defenses, and every maneuver Rylan made exploited the weaknesses of their enemies. After tense hours of maneuvering, trapping, and countering, the last attackers retreated into space, disoriented and unable to continue the pursuit. The station was quiet once again, though damaged. Rylan and Lyra stood together in the control room, breathing heavily. "You did well," he said softly. "Better than I could have hoped." Lyra's markings glowed softly, almost like a smile. She no longer trembled. Fear had transformed into purpose, trust, and strength. Together, they had survived the chase, outsmarted their pursuers, and discovered the true depth of their combined abilities. Rylan realized that the journey ahead would be even more challenging. The galaxy was vast, the threats numerous, but now they were a team. Human skill and alien power, trust and determination, ready to face whatever came next. And he knew one thing with certainty. Lyra's trembling had not been weakness. It had been the spark that would ignite their shared strength and resilience against the dangers of the universe. The shuttle hovered silently in the dark void beyond the asteroid belt. Captain Rylan Voss adjusted the controls with precision, scanning for any trace of their pursuers. Lyra sat beside him, her small hands resting lightly on the console. Her markings glowed faintly, rhythmic and calm now, but the tension in the air reminded him that the danger was far from over. Every instinct told him they were being watched, tracked, and anticipated. He could feel it in the shuttle's subtle vibrations, in the way the stars seemed to shift around them, almost like the universe itself was holding its breath. Lyra tilted her head, sensing something he could not yet identify. Her glowing eyes scanned the emptiness outside the viewport. Rylan noticed the faint pulses in her energy, subtle signals that mirrored the patterns he had once seen when she first arrived on Aurelia 9. They were faint, but they carried meaning, awareness, warning, readiness. "Something's coming," she whispered softly, her voice like a delicate chime. Though it was barely audible, the urgency in it made Rylan stiffen. He scanned the sensors, but the readings were unclear. Whoever or whatever was approaching had adapted, becoming invisible to ordinary detection. He understood immediately that Lyra's abilities were now their only true advantage. "We'll have to use your gift," he said firmly, turning to her. "Are you ready?" Her markings flared, a brilliant dance of light and color responding to his words. She nodded, tiny but determined. Rylan could see the transformation. Fear had been replaced by focus, trembling by strength. She was no longer the cornered girl from the cave. She was a partner, a force, and he trusted her completely. The first attackers appeared suddenly, a squadron of sleek, dark ships moving with precise formation. They surged toward the shuttle, weapons charged and targeting systems locked. Rylan twisted the controls, dodging the first salvo of energy blasts. Sparks danced across the hull, and alarms echoed in the cabin. Lyra extended her hands, her energy flaring outward. A shimmering veil of light formed around the shuttle, bending the incoming blasts into harmless trajectories. The attackers fired again, but the pulses of Lyra's power distorted their vision, their targeting disrupted. Rylan seized the opportunity, pushing the shuttle into a narrow gap between two massive asteroids. The enemy ships followed, attempting to match his maneuvers, but Lyra's illusions made it impossible to know where he truly was. Every pulse of energy from her created false images, reflections, and shadows. The attackers fired blindly, their frustration growing with every missed shot. "This way!" Rylan shouted, pointing toward a larger asteroid cluster ahead. "We can trap them!" Lyra nodded, her markings glowing brighter as she channeled more power. She reached through the controls, guiding him instinctively toward a section of the asteroid belt that formed a natural funnel. The pursuing ships had no choice but to follow, compressed by the rocks, unable to maneuver freely. Rylan gritted his teeth and accelerated, weaving through the narrow passages. Lyra's energy pulsed in response, creating illusions that masked their escape while confusing the attackers. One of the enemy ships fired directly at the shuttle, and Rylan barely dodged. The blast struck an asteroid, sending fragments flying in all directions. Lyra's eyes widened, and she extended her hands again, directing a wave of energy that deflected the debris harmlessly around them. Rylan marveled at her control. She had gone from trembling in fear to commanding the battlefield, shaping energy with precision and creativity. The attackers pressed on, relentless, but the trap was set. Rylan and Lyra maneuvered the shuttle into the narrowest part of the asteroid cluster. Lyra projected illusions across the surfaces of the rocks, creating phantom duplicates of their shuttle in multiple positions. The enemy ships hesitated, confused, firing at images that vanished as quickly as they appeared. Rylan exploited the moment, twisting the shuttle sharply through the final passage and emerging into open space on the other side. The attackers regrouped, scanning desperately for any sign of the real shuttle. Lyra's energy shimmered subtly around the vessel, still hiding their presence. Rylan knew this was their chance to break free. He activated the shuttle's engines fully, propelling them toward a distant nebula whose dense gas clouds would provide cover. Lyra's abilities combined with the natural obstruction of the nebula created a perfect hiding place. Inside the shuttle, they finally allowed themselves a moment to breathe. Lyra sank into her seat, exhaustion and relief evident in her posture. Her markings dimmed slightly, the intense pulses of the battle replaced by a steady glow. Rylan leaned back, feeling the weight of what they had accomplished. They had survived the ambush, outsmarted their pursuers, and proven that together they were unstoppable. "You did it," he said softly, reaching out to touch her arm. "You saved us both." Lyra looked at him, her large eyes reflecting the nebula's glow. She made a soft, melodic sound, a mixture of relief and acknowledgement. Rylan understood it as a wordless expression of gratitude, trust, and bond. The trembling that had once defined her had disappeared entirely, replaced by confidence and purpose. Hours passed as the shuttle drifted through the nebula. Rylan took the opportunity to learn more about Lyra. Through gestures, melodic sounds, and patterns of her glowing markings, she revealed pieces of her story. Her home planet had been a vibrant world filled with knowledge and life, a place of harmony between species and energy. But an invading force had attacked, merciless and efficient, destroying everything. Lyra had fled, carrying knowledge of her people's culture and abilities, and now she was hunted across the stars. Rylan listened carefully, piecing together the journey that had brought her to him. He realized that her abilities were not just rare, they were extraordinary. A combination of psychic sensitivity, energy manipulation, and technological affinity that made her one of the most unique beings in the galaxy. She had survived impossible odds, And now, with him, she had a chance to reclaim safety and purpose. "We need to find a safe place to regroup," Rylan said. "Somewhere we can plan our next move and prepare for what's coming." Lyra nodded, tracing another series of shapes in the air, pointing to a star system several light-years away. Rylan recognized it as a remote cluster, little known to human explorers, but rich in resources and hidden by natural phenomena. It would be ideal for a temporary base. As they approached the system, the shuttle sensors detected faint energy traces, not aggressive, but persistent. Rylan frowned. "They're still out there," he said. "They haven't given up." Lyra's markings flared. She raised her hands, and a pulse of energy emanated from her, scanning the surrounding space. The readings she revealed were subtle, undetectable by ordinary instruments, but they showed the hidden approach of smaller reconnaissance craft. Rylan understood immediately. They were being watched, studied, and tested. "We'll have to be smart," he said. "We can't fight them head-on forever." Lyra responded with a soft hum, her markings forming a series of complex patterns that indicated agreement and readiness. Together, they began devising a plan. Lyra's energy could create illusions, block sensors, and manipulate light. Rylan's knowledge of tactics, machinery, and navigation gave them a unique advantage. They would use these strengths to turn the Hunter's persistence against them. As the shuttle entered the remote system, they discovered a hidden asteroid field surrounding a small, lush world. Its surface was dotted with natural caves, water sources, and energy-rich minerals, perfect for temporary shelter. Rylan guided the shuttle to a safe landing area, careful to avoid detection. Lyra's energy pulses hid the shuttle from distant scanners, creating a subtle veil that masked their presence. Once on the surface, Lyra explored immediately. She traced patterns in the rocks, recognizing energy sources and natural structures that could be useful. Rylan followed, gathering resources, scanning for threats, and noting escape routes. The duo worked in perfect sync, a combination of human ingenuity and alien perception. As night fell, Lyra shared more of her knowledge, pointing out hidden resources, energy conduits, and natural formations that could be used for defense or concealment. Rylan marveled at her intelligence and adaptability. She had survived across galaxies alone, but now, with guidance and collaboration, they were building something stronger, a sanctuary, however temporary, from their relentless pursuers. The first night in their hidden refuge passed quietly. Lyra rested fully for the first time, her markings glowing gently as if absorbing the calm energy of the world around them. Rylan watched over her, his mind racing with strategies for the future. He knew their enemies would return, stronger and more determined. But now he understood something crucial. Together, they could face whatever came next. Lyra's trembling had been a signal of fear, but now it was replaced by purpose. She was ready to fight, to survive, and to reclaim her destiny. Morning arrived with the soft glow of twin suns, illuminating the hidden world with warm light. Lyra rose first, stretching and moving with newfound confidence. Her markings shifted rhythmically, reflecting her calm yet alert state. Rylan followed, inspired by her resilience. They had survived ambushes, chased through asteroid belts, and outsmarted persistent hunters. But most importantly, they had done it together, forming a bond stronger than fear. Rylan knew the galaxy was vast and full of dangers, but he also understood that courage, trust, and unity could overcome even the most relentless threats. Lyra, once trembling and cornered, was now a partner, a beacon of strength and intelligence. Together, they would face the universe, ready to protect one another and the knowledge she carried. As they looked out over the hidden world, the distant stars glittering like jewels, Rylan made a silent vow. Whatever challenges awaited, they would face them. They would survive. And Lyra's journey, once defined by fear and pursuit, would now be guided by trust, courage, and the unbreakable bond they had forged in the darkest reaches of space. The galaxy stretched before them, infinite and full of possibilities. Together they would carve their path, proving that even in the vastness of the stars, courage, intelligence, and unity could shine brighter than fear. And for Lyra, the trembling had ended, replaced by strength that would guide her across the universe.